The crystal paperweight shattered against the marble floor as Leonardo Castellano's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Don't look at me like that, Scarlett." His hands gripped the edge of his mahogany desk, knuckles white with restraint. The woman standing frozen by his office door, cleaning supplies scattered at her feet, had just witnessed something that could get her killed. But it wasn't fear in her emerald eyes that made his chest tighten. It was something far more dangerous. Compassion. "Like what?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of Miami's storm raging outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office. "Like you see something worth saving in me." The confession escaped before he could stop it, raw and vulnerable in a way that would have shocked anyone who knew Leonardo Castellano, the most feared man in South Florida. But Scarlett Hayes wasn't just anyone. She was the cleaning lady who'd been invisible in his world for months, until this moment when she'd walked in at the wrong time and seen him at his most human. And now, everything was about to change. 3 hours earlier, Scarlett Hayes had been invisible. That's how she preferred it in the gleaming towers of Castellano Enterprises, where she cleaned offices after hours when the building emptied of its expensive suits and dangerous whispers. Invisible meant safe. Invisible meant she could work her 3 jobs, pay her mounting bills, and maybe, just maybe, save enough to get her little sister out of their neighborhood before the streets claimed another victim. She pushed her cart down the marble hallway of the 42nd floor, her worn sneakers silent against the polished stone. The executive level always felt different at night, heavy with the weight of secrets and power that lingered in the air like expensive cologne. Most of the offices were dark, their occupants long gone to their mansions and penthouses, but light still spilled from the corner office at the end of the hall, Leonardo Castellano's office. Scarlett had been cleaning his space for 8 months, always when he was gone, always leaving everything exactly as she'd found it. She knew his habits by now, the way he left his coffee cup on the left side of his desk, how he kept a single white rose in a crystal vase by the window, replaced fresh every morning. She knew he worked late on Thursdays, which was why she always saved his office for last on other nights. But tonight was different. Tonight her supervisor had called in sick, scrambling the schedule. Tonight she was 3 hours behind and had no choice but to clean around him if necessary. She knocked softly on the doorframe, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Mr. Castellano, I'm sorry to disturb you, but I need to—" "Come in." His voice was rougher than she'd expected, gravelly in a way that sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. Scarlett pushed her cart inside, keeping her eyes down as she'd been trained. Don't look, don't listen, don't exist. But she could feel his presence like a physical force, commanding and intense even from across the room. She'd seen him in passing before, tall, dark-haired, with the kind of dangerous beauty that belonged in movies rather than real life. But up close, the air itself seemed to vibrate with his energy. "I'll be quick," she murmured, moving toward the windows with her cleaning supplies. "You won't even know I'm here." A low sound escaped him, something between a laugh and a sigh. "Trust me, sweetheart. I know you're here." The endearment, spoken in that rough velvet voice, made her hands tremble as she sprayed the glass. She could see his reflection in the window, seated behind his massive desk, but she forced herself to focus on her work. Rich men like Leonardo Castellano didn't notice women like her except to give orders or complaints. "What's your name?" The question caught her off guard. She turned slightly, still not meeting his eyes. "Scarlett, sir. Scarlett Hayes." "Scarlett." He repeated it slowly, like he was tasting wine. "How long have you been working here?" 8 months, sir." She moved to dust his bookshelf, hyper-aware of every breath, every small movement he made. "And in 8 months, this is the first time we've spoken." It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway. "Yes, sir, I usually work when the offices are empty." "Look at me, Scarlett." The command was soft, but undeniable. Against every instinct screaming at her to keep her head down, she turned and met his gaze. The impact was immediate and devastating. His eyes were the color of dark chocolate, framed by thick lashes that should have looked feminine, but only added to his masculine appeal. There was intelligence there and danger, but also something that looked almost like loneliness. "Better," he murmured, and she realized she'd been holding her breath. You have beautiful eyes. Has anyone ever told you that? Heat flooded her cheeks. I should get back to work. Should you? He leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made her feel exposed. Tell me something, Scarlet Hayes. What do you see when you look at me? The question was so unexpected, so personal, that she almost dropped her dustcloth. I don't understand. It's a simple question. Most people see a monster. Some see a business opportunity. A few see a target. His voice was conversational, but there was something sharp underneath. What do you see? Scarlet's throat went dry. She should lie, should give him the answer he expected, but something in his expression stopped her. Beneath the expensive suit and dangerous reputation, she saw exhaustion, isolation. A man who commanded respect through fear, but had forgotten what it felt like to be truly seen. I see someone who's tired, she said quietly. The words hung in the air between them like a confession. Leonardo's expression shifted, surprise flickering across his features before his mask slipped back into place. Tired, he repeated. Interesting assessment. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from her sister. Can you pick up milk on the way home? And maybe some of those cookies you like? The simple message from her 17-year-old sister brought reality crashing back. This wasn't her world. She was a cleaning lady having a surreal conversation with one of the most powerful men in Miami, a man whose business dealings she didn't want to think about too closely. I really should finish up, she said, moving toward his desk to dust the surface. Of course. But he didn't look away from her, and she could feel his gaze tracking her every movement. As she reached for the crystal paperweight on his desk, their hands brushed. The contact was brief, accidental, but it sent electricity shooting up her arm. She jerked back, nearly dropping the paperweight, and found herself staring into his eyes again. Careful, he said softly. That's worth more than most people make in a year. Sorry, She fumbled with the crystal, her hands shaking. Scarlet. His voice was gentler now. Breathe. She did, drawing in a shaky breath that carried his scent, expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely masculine. When she looked up, he was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. How old are you? 24. And you work 3 jobs. It wasn't a question. Somehow he knew. How did you? I make it my business to know things. He stood, moving around the desk with predatory grace. The question is, why does a beautiful, intelligent woman work herself to exhaustion cleaning offices? The compliment hit her like a physical blow. Beautiful. When was the last time anyone had called her beautiful? I have responsibilities. Family? She nodded, not trusting her voice. And they're lucky to have someone who cares so much. He was closer now, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. But who takes care of you, Scarlet? The question broke something inside her chest. I take care of myself. That's not the same thing. Before she could respond, the elevator chimed in the distance, followed by the sharp click of heels on marble. Leonardo's expression changed instantly, the warmth disappearing behind a wall of cold professionalism. Expecting someone? Scarlet asked. His jaw tightened. Unfortunately. The woman who swept into Leonardo's office moved like she owned the world, and in many ways she did. Victoria Ashford was old Miami money wrapped in designer silk, with platinum blonde hair that cost more to maintain than Scarlet made in 6 months, and a smile sharp enough to cut glass. Leo, darling, Victoria purred, her gaze sliding over Scarlet like she was furniture. I didn't realize you were entertaining the help. Scarlet felt heat flood her cheeks, but before she could grab her cart and flee, Leonardo's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Ms. Hayes is working, Victoria, something you might not be familiar with. The insult was delivered with such casual elegance that it took Victoria a moment to register it. When she did, her perfect smile faltered for just an instant before snapping back into place. Of course, how silly of me. Victoria moved to Leonardo's side, her hand trailing possessively across his shoulder. I just wanted to discuss the arrangements for Saturday's charity gala, the one where we'll be announcing our engagement. Scarlett's stomach dropped like a stone. Engagement. Of course. Men like Leonardo Castellano didn't end up with cleaning ladies. They married socialites and heiresses, women who could navigate their dangerous world with manicured nails and trust funds. "There's nothing to announce," Leonardo said, his voice flat. Victoria's laugh was like breaking crystal. "Don't be ridiculous, darling. Our families have been planning this for months. The merger between Ashford Industries and your enterprises will be the social event of the season." Merger. The word hit Scarlett like a slap. This wasn't about love. It was business. But that didn't make it hurt any less to watch Victoria's perfectly manicured fingers trace patterns on Leonardo's chest like she owned him. "I should go," Scarlett whispered, reaching for her cart. "Yes," Victoria said without looking at her. "You should." But Leonardo's voice stopped her. "Stay." The single word carried such authority that Scarlett froze mid-step. Victoria's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Leo, really? Surely your cleaning can wait until—" "I said, stay." He looked directly at Scarlett, and something in his expression made her pulse race. "Finish what you started." The double meaning wasn't lost on any of them. Victoria's face flushed with anger, but she was too well-bred to cause a scene in front of the help. Instead, she moved to the window, her posture rigid with barely contained fury. Scarlett tried to focus on dusting, but the tension in the room was suffocating. She could feel Victoria's hatred radiating toward her like heat from a fire, and Leonardo's presence was a constant distraction. Every time she moved, she was hyper-aware of where he was, how he watched her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "The Torino family will be at the gala," Victoria said, her voice artificially light. "I do hope there won't be any unpleasantness." Leonardo's expression hardened. "The Torinos know better than to start something at a public event." "Of course. Though I heard their youngest son has been asking questions about your recent acquisitions. Something about missing shipments?" Scarlett's hands stilled on the bookshelf. She shouldn't be hearing this, couldn't be hearing this. But her feet felt rooted to the floor. "Marco Torino is a child playing at being a man," Leonardo said dismissively. "Let him ask his questions. Still, it might be wise to clarify the situation before it becomes a problem." The way Victoria said clarify made Scarlett's blood run cold. She'd grown up in neighborhoods where people disappeared for asking the wrong questions, where clarifying situations meant something permanent and violent. "I'll handle Marco Torino if he becomes an issue." Leonardo's voice carried a promise that made Scarlett shiver. "Of course you will, darling, you always do." Victoria moved back to his side, her hand sliding down his arm. "It's one of the things I've always admired about you, your efficiency." Scarlett couldn't take it anymore. The casual discussion of violence, the way Victoria touched Leonardo like he belonged to her, the growing realization that she was completely out of her depth in this world of beautiful monsters and deadly games. "I'm finished," she said quickly, abandoning her half-completed dusting. "I'll come back tomorrow to finish." "Scarlett." Leonardo's voice stopped her again, but this time she didn't turn around. "Good night, Mr. Castellano. Miss Ashford." She was almost to the door when Victoria's voice followed her, sweet as poisoned honey. "Oh, and Scarlett, be more careful about which offices you clean and when. Some conversations aren't meant for everyone." The threat was unmistakable. Scarlett's hand tightened on her cart handle, but she forced herself to nod. "Of course, ma'am." She made it to the elevator before her knees started shaking. As the doors closed, she caught a glimpse of Leonardo watching her through his office windows, his expression unreadable. Victoria was pressed against his side, talking animatedly, but his eyes never left Scarlett's face until the elevator carried her away. The ride down felt endless. 42 floors to process what had just happened, to understand that she'd somehow stumbled into something dangerous and complicated. Leonardo Castellano wasn't just a businessman, he was exactly what the whispers said he was. And Victoria Ashford wasn't just his fiancée. She was a woman who wouldn't hesitate to eliminate threats to her perfectly planned future. By the time Scarlett reached the parking garage, her hands had stopped shaking, but her mind was racing. She loaded her cart into the service elevator, and tried to convince herself that tomorrow she'd go back to being invisible, that tonight had been an aberration. But as she walked to her beat-up Honda Civic, she couldn't shake the memory of Leonardo's eyes, the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious and fragile, or the way her heart had raced when he'd told her to stay. Her phone buzzed with another text from her sister. "How was work? You're later than usual." Scarlett stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, "Just the usual. Be home soon." But as she drove through Miami's neon-lit streets toward her modest apartment, she knew nothing would ever be usual again. She'd seen behind the curtain of Leonardo Castellano's world, and more dangerously, he'd seen her. Really seen her, in a way that made her feel beautiful and terrified in equal measure. The smart thing would be to request a different floor, to go back to being invisible. The safe thing would be to forget the way his voice had roughened when he'd said her name, or how his casual compliments had made her feel like she could fly. But as Scarlett pulled into her apartment complex, she knew she wouldn't do the smart thing. Because for the first time in her life, someone had looked at her like she mattered, and even if it was dangerous, even if it was impossible, she wasn't ready to give that up. Not yet. Scarlett didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Leonardo's face, heard Victoria's veiled threat, felt the electricity that had sparked between them when their hands touched. By morning, she'd convinced herself that the smart thing, the only thing, was to request a transfer to a different floor. But life had other plans. Scarlett, her supervisor Janet, called out as she arrived at the cleaning company's office. "Perfect timing. I need you to cover the executive floor again tonight. Emergency cleaning for some big meeting tomorrow." Scarlett's stomach dropped. "Can't someone else? Everyone else is booked. Besides, you know that floor better than anyone." Janet handed her the assignment sheet. "Mr. Castellano specifically requested you." The words hit her like a physical blow. He'd requested her, specifically. "Janet, I think maybe—" "Scarlett, honey, this is a good thing. When the big bosses start asking for you by name, it means job security. Don't overthink it." But overthinking was exactly what Scarlett did for the rest of the day. As she worked her morning shift at the diner and her afternoon shift at the grocery store, her mind kept circling back to Leonardo's dark eyes and the way he'd made her feel seen. By the time evening arrived, she'd rehearsed a dozen different ways to keep things professional, to rebuild the wall of invisibility that had kept her safe. None of her rehearsals prepared her for what she found when she stepped off the elevator. The executive floor was in chaos. Men in expensive suits moved with urgent purpose, their voices low and tense. Security guards she'd never seen before stood at strategic points, their hands resting casually on concealed weapons. And in the center of it all, Leonardo Castellano commanded the storm with the calm authority of a general preparing for war. "The shipment was intercepted at the port," one of his lieutenants was saying, as Scarlett tried to make herself invisible against the wall. Marco Torino's people were waiting. Leonardo's expression was carved from stone. "How many did we lose?" "3 dead, 2 in the hospital. The cargo's gone." Scarlett's blood turned to ice. 3 dead. She was hearing about actual murders, standing in a hallway where men discussed death like quarterly reports. "And Marco? In the wind. But we'll find him. See that you do." Leonardo's voice carried a promise of violence that made Scarlett's knees weak. "I want him brought to me alive. We're going to have a conversation about respect." She should leave, should turn around and walk back to the elevator and never return. But as she took a step backward, her cart bumped against the wall with a soft thud that seemed to echo like a gunshot in the sudden silence. Every head turned toward her. Every dangerous man in that hallway focused on the cleaning lady who'd heard too much. Scarlett felt like a deer caught in headlights, frozen under the weight of their collective stare. "Gentlemen," Leonardo said quietly, "we'll continue this in my office." The men dispersed like smoke, leaving Scarlett alone in the hallway with the man who'd been occupying her thoughts for 24 hours. But this wasn't the Leonardo who'd complimented her eyes or asked who took care of her. This was the other side of him, the dangerous side that ruled Miami's underworld with an iron fist. "You're early," he said, moving toward her with predatory grace. "I can come back later," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "No." He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, see the tension in his jaw. "We need to talk." He led her to his office, closing the door behind them with a soft click that sounded like a death sentence. Scarlett stood frozen by her cart, watching as he moved to pour himself a drink from a crystal decanter. "Scotch?" he offered. She shook her head, not trusting her voice. "Smart girl." He took a sip, studying her over the rim of his glass. "You heard things tonight, things that could be problematic." "I don't know what you mean," she lied. His smile was sharp as a blade. "Don't insult my intelligence, Scarlett. You heard my men discussing business. The question is, what are we going to do about it?" Terror clawed at her throat. "I won't say anything, I swear. I just clean offices. I don't see anything, don't hear anything." "Stop." His voice cut through her panic like a lifeline. "Breathe." She tried, drawing in shaky gulps of air while he watched her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said quietly. "But we have a problem. You know things now. Things that make you dangerous to my enemies and valuable to my rivals." "I don't want to know anything," she said desperately. "I just want to do my job and go home to my sister." Something shifted in his expression at the mention of her sister. "Tell me about her." The request was so unexpected that it caught her off guard. "What? Your sister? You work 3 jobs to support her. Tell me about her." Scarlett's throat tightened with emotion. "Her name is Maya. She's 17, a senior in high school. She wants to be a doctor." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "She's brilliant, Mr. Castellano. Top of her class, full scholarship to University of Miami, if she can just stay out of trouble for 8 more months. And you're making sure she can." "I'm trying." Tears burned behind her eyes. "Our parents died in a car accident 3 years ago. It's just us now." Leonardo set down his glass and moved closer, his expression softening. "What's your biggest fear, Scarlett?" "That I'll fail her," she whispered. "That she'll end up like—" She gestured vaguely at the world around them, the dangerous underbelly of Miami that claimed so many bright futures. "Like me." The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Scarlett looked up at him, seeing not the feared Mafia boss, but the man who'd asked who took care of her, who'd made her feel beautiful and important. "You're not what I expected," she said honestly. "What did you expect?" "A monster." His laugh was bitter. "Most days you wouldn't be wrong." Before she could respond, the office door burst open. Victoria Ashford swept in like an avenging angel, her eyes blazing with fury. "Leo, darling, your men said you were in a meeting, but I—" She stopped short when she saw Scarlett, her expression shifting from confusion to rage in an instant. "You've got to be kidding me." "Victoria," Leonardo's voice carried a warning. "Don't Victoria me." She stalked across the room, her designer heels clicking like bullets on the marble floor. "I heard about the Torino situation. I came to offer support, and I find you here with her." The venom in Victoria's voice made Scarlett flinch. "I should go—" "Yes, you should," Victoria snapped. "In fact, you should go very far away and never come back." "That's enough." Leonardo's voice cracked like a whip, but Victoria was beyond caring about his authority. "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're sharing family business with the cleaning lady. Do you have any idea how that looks? How it makes us look?" "Us?" Leonardo's voice was dangerously quiet. "Yes, us. Your future wife, your business partner, the woman who's been by your side for—" "The woman who's been by my side when it's convenient," Leonardo cut her off. "The woman who sees me as a business merger and nothing more." Victoria's face flushed with anger and something that might have been hurt. "How dare you? After everything we've built together, everything we've planned—" "Everything you've planned," he corrected. "I never agreed to marry you, Victoria. Our families may have expectations, but I don't take orders from anyone." The silence that followed was deafening. Scarlett stood frozen, watching 2 powerful people tear each other apart over things she couldn't begin to understand. But she could see the pain beneath Victoria's rage, the desperation of a woman watching her carefully constructed future crumble. "You'll regret this," Victoria said finally, her voice deadly calm. "Both of you." She turned on her heel and stalked out, leaving Scarlett alone with Leonardo and the weight of what had just happened. The threat hung in the air like smoke, and Scarlett knew with bone-deep certainty that her life had just become infinitely more complicated. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Leonardo looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. "For what?" "For causing problems between you and your fiancée." "She's not my fiancée." He moved closer, his eyes intense. "And you didn't cause anything, Scarlett. You just illuminated things that were already there." Before she could ask what he meant, her phone rang. Maya's ringtone. Scarlett answered without thinking. "Scarlett?" Her sister's voice was tight with fear. "There are men outside our apartment. They've been there for an hour, just watching." The blood drained from Scarlett's face. "What kind of men?" "Expensive suits, nice cars. They look like—" The line went dead. Leonardo was moving before Scarlett could process what was happening. He barked orders into his phone while grabbing his jacket, his calm facade cracking to reveal the dangerous man beneath. "Marco, take 6 men to the Palmetto Apartments on 15th Street. Now." His eyes never left Scarlett's face as he spoke. "Anyone who doesn't belong there, you remove them. Quietly." "My sister," Scarlett whispered, her hands shaking as she tried to call Maya back. The phone went straight to voicemail. "She's fine," Leonardo said, his voice carrying absolute certainty. "Victoria's people are watching, not acting. She's trying to send a message." What kind of message? But even as she asked, Scarlett knew. The threat Victoria had made wasn't empty. She was showing Scarlett exactly how vulnerable she was, how easily her carefully protected world could be shattered. "The kind that says you're in my world now, whether you want to be or not." Leonardo's expression was grim. "I'm sorry, Scarlett. This is my fault." "Your fault?" Anger flared through her fear. "I didn't ask for any of this. I just wanted to clean your office and go home." "I know." His voice was gentler now, and when he reached for her hands, she didn't pull away. "But wanting and getting are 2 different things. The moment Victoria saw how I looked at you, this became inevitable." "How you looked at me?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Leonardo's thumb traced across her knuckles, the touch sending electricity up her arm. "Like you were something precious, something worth protecting." The confession hit her like a physical blow. "You barely know me." "I know enough." His dark eyes held hers captive. "I know you work yourself to exhaustion for your sister. I know you see people, really see them, instead of just what they can do for you. I know that when you looked at me last night, you didn't see a monster. What did I see?" "Someone who's tired," he said, echoing her words from the night before. "Someone who's been alone so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen." Scarlett's breath caught in her throat. "Leonardo." "My men are in position," he said, checking his phone. "Your sister is safe, but we need to get you somewhere secure until I can deal with Victoria." "Deal with her how?" The question came out sharper than she intended. Leonardo's expression hardened. "However I need to." "No." The word surprised them both with its force. "I won't be responsible for you hurting someone because of me." "Scarlett, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly." She pulled her hands free from his, stepping back. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. Your world, your rules, your violence, I won't be part of it. You already are part of it." His voice was flat, matter of fact. "The moment Victoria decided you were a threat, you became part of it. There's no going back now." The truth of his words hit her like a slap. She thought of Maya, alone and scared, of the men watching their apartment, her sister's dreams of medical school, of a future beyond their neighborhood's limitations. All of it suddenly felt impossibly fragile. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. "I want you to trust me." He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the best and worst ways. "I want you to let me protect you and your sister." "I want—" "What? What do you want, Leonardo?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither of them was ready to voice. Leonardo's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Scarlett saw past his careful control to the man beneath, lonely, desperate, and more vulnerable than he'd ever admit. "I want you to look at me the way you did last night," he said finally. Like I'm worth saving. The confession broke something inside her chest. This powerful, dangerous man who commanded respect through fear was asking her, a cleaning lady from the wrong side of Miami, to see him as human, to save him from the monster he'd become. Leonardo, she breathed. Before she could say more, the office door exploded inward. Armed men in tactical gear poured through, their weapons trained on Leonardo with military precision. At their head was a young man with dark hair and cold eyes, Marco Torino, Scarlett realized with dawning horror. Well, well, Marco said, his voice carrying a slight Italian accent. The great Leonardo Castellano, caught with his pants down and his guard down. Leonardo didn't flinch, didn't show even a flicker of fear. Marco, I was wondering when you'd work up the courage to face me directly instead of hiding behind your father's reputation. Marco's face flushed with anger. My father built an empire while you were still stealing lunch money. Show some respect. Respect is earned, Leonardo said calmly. What do you want? What's mine? The shipment you stole, the territory you've been muscling in on, and... Marco's gaze shifted to Scarlett, his smile turning predatory. An apology for the disrespect you've shown my family. The shipment was payment for services rendered. The territory was abandoned, and I don't apologize to children playing at being men. Marco's hand moved to his gun. Careful, old man. You're outnumbered and outgunned. Am I? Leonardo's smile was sharp as broken glass. The lights went out. In the darkness that followed, chaos erupted. Gunfire strobed like lightning, muzzle flashes illuminating fragments of violence, men shouting, bodies hitting the floor, the sharp crack of breaking glass. Scarlett found herself pressed against the wall, Leonardo's body shielding her from the mayhem. Stay down, he breathed in her ear, his voice deadly calm despite the war raging around them. When the emergency lighting kicked in 30 seconds later, the office looked like a battlefield. Marco's men were down, unconscious or worse, and Leonardo's security team had materialized from the shadows like avenging angels. Marco himself was on his knees, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead, Leonardo's gun pressed to the back of his skull. You were saying something about being outgunned? Leonardo's voice was conversational, almost friendly. Marco's bravado crumbled. Please, I was just following orders. Whose orders? My father's. He said you were getting too big, too dangerous, that you needed to be reminded of your place. And what place is that? Under his thumb, Marco whispered. Leonardo's laugh was cold as winter. Your father always did have delusions of grandeur. Tell him this. I've been patient because I respected what he built, but patience has limits, and he's reached mine. He pulled the gun away, and Marco sagged with relief. But Leonardo wasn't finished. You came into my building, threatened my people, and put an innocent woman in danger. That requires consequences. What kind of consequences? Leonardo's smile was terrifying in its gentleness. The kind that will remind your father why people fear the Castellano name. He nodded to his men, who hauled Marco to his feet. As they dragged him toward the door, Marco's desperate gaze found Scarlett. This isn't over, he said, his voice carrying a promise that made her blood run cold. You think you're safe with him. Ask him about his first wife. Ask him what happened to the last woman who got too close. The words hit Leonardo like a physical blow. His face went white, then red with rage, and for a moment Scarlett thought he might kill Marco with his bare hands. Get him out of here, he said through gritted teeth. As Marco was dragged away, his laughter echoed through the hallway, cruel and knowing. Scarlett stared at Leonardo, seeing the pain that Marco's words had caused, the old wound that had been torn open. Leonardo, she said softly. He turned to her, and the anguish in his eyes took her breath away. You should go home, Scarlett. This world, my world, it destroys everything beautiful it touches. What happened to your wife? The question escaped before she could stop it. Leonardo's face went blank, all emotion shuttering away behind walls of steel. She died because of me, he said simply, because she loved a monster. The silence that followed Leonardo's confession was deafening. Scarlett stood frozen, watching the man who'd just saved her life retreat behind walls of guilt and self-loathing. The office around them bore the scars of violence, bullet holes in the walls, shattered glass, the metallic scent of blood. But none of it seemed as devastating as the pain in Leonardo's eyes. "Tell me," she said quietly. "No." His voice was flat, emotionless. "You should go home to your sister. My men will make sure you're safe." "Leonardo." "This conversation is over, Scarlett." He moved to his desk, his movements sharp and controlled. "Janet will receive a generous bonus for your services, and you'll be transferred to a different building, somewhere safe." The dismissal hit her like a slap. After everything they'd shared, everything she'd felt, he was sending her away, like she meant nothing. Like the connection between them had been her imagination. Just like that. Anger flared through her hurt. "You're going to make decisions for me without asking what I want. What you want doesn't matter." The words were cruel, designed to push her away. This was a mistake from the beginning. Which part? Talking to me like I was human, making me feel like I mattered, or saving my life? Leonardo's jaw tightened, but he didn't look at her. All of it. Scarlett stared at him for a long moment, seeing through his act to the scared man beneath. Marco's words had shattered something inside him, brought back memories he'd tried to bury. But she wasn't going to let him push her away that easily. "Your wife," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "What was her name?" "Scarlett, don't—" "What was her name?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Leonardo's hands clenched into fists, his control fracturing. "Isabella," he said finally. "Her name was Isabella." "How did she die?" "Car bomb." The words were torn from his throat. "Meant for me. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and she died because someone wanted to hurt me." Scarlett's heart clenched with sympathy. "How long ago?" 5 years. His voice was barely a whisper. 5 years, and I still wake up seeing her face, hearing her scream. "And you blame yourself?" "I killed her." The confession was raw, devastating. "Maybe not with my own hands, but I might as well have. She died because she loved me, because she was part of my world." "She died because someone else chose violence," Scarlett corrected firmly. "Not because you loved her." Leonardo's head snapped up, his eyes blazing. "You don't understand." "I understand that you're afraid." She moved closer, ignoring the danger in his expression. "I understand that losing someone you love is terrifying, and that it's easier to push people away than risk that pain again." "Scarlett, stop!" "No." She was close enough to touch him now, close enough to see the tears he was fighting back. "I understand because I've been there. When my parents died, I wanted to build walls around Maya and me, to keep the whole world out because it was safer. But safe isn't living, Leonardo. It's just existing. This is different, is it? Or are you just scared that you might care about someone again?" The question hit its mark. Leonardo's careful control shattered, and suddenly he was moving, backing her against the wall with desperate intensity. "Of course I care about you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I've cared about you since the first night you looked at me and saw something worth saving. Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? How terrifying it is to feel something again after 5 years of numbness?" Scarlett's breath caught at the raw honesty in his voice. "Then don't push me away. I have to." His hands framed her face, thumbs tracing her cheekbones with heartbreaking tenderness. "I won't watch another woman I love die because of my choices." "Love?" The word escaped as barely a whisper. Leonardo's expression cracked completely. "God help me, yes. I love you, Scarlett Hayes. I love your strength, your compassion, the way you see light in dark places. I love that you work 3 jobs for your sister and still find energy to care about a broken man like me." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Leonardo." "But love isn't enough." His voice broke on the words. "It wasn't enough to save Isabella, and it won't be enough to save you. Maybe I don't need saving." She reached up to cover his hands with hers. "Maybe I need living, maybe we both do." Before he could protest, she rose on her toes and kissed him. The contact was electric, desperate, full of everything they'd been fighting against. Leonardo groaned against her lips, his resistance crumbling as he kissed her back with 5 years of loneliness and longing. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Leonardo rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed in defeat. "You're going to destroy me," he whispered. "Only if you let me." She smiled through her tears. "But I'm hoping you'll destroy me a little too." "Scarlett." The office door burst open again, but this time it was Leonardo's lieutenant, Marco, looking harried and urgent. "Boss, we've got a problem. Victoria Ashford is downstairs with a team of federal agents. She's claiming you kidnapped a civilian." Leonardo's blood ran cold. "How long do we have?" 5 minutes, maybe less." Leonardo turned to Scarlett, his expression grim. "She's forcing my hand. If the feds find you here after what happened tonight, you'll be caught in the middle of a war between our families." "Then what do we do?" Leonardo's smile was sharp as a blade. "We give her exactly what she wants." Before Scarlett could ask what he meant, he was moving, barking orders into his phone. "Prepare the helicopter, clear the roof, and get me a clean car." "Leonardo, what are you doing?" He turned to her, and the look in his eyes made her heart race. "Something I should have done the moment I realized I loved you." "Which is?" "Taking you away from here, away from Victoria, from Marco, from all of it." He cupped her face in his hands, his voice intense. "I can't promise you safety, Scarlett. My world will always be dangerous. But I can promise you that I'll spend every day of my life protecting you and Maya. I can promise you that you'll never have to work 3 jobs again, never have to worry about bills or your sister's future. You're asking me to run away with you. I'm asking you to trust me, to take a leap of faith with a man who's been dead inside for 5 years until you brought him back to life." Scarlett looked into his eyes, seeing the fear and hope warring there. She thought of Maya, of the life they'd built together, of the safety of invisibility she'd be giving up. But she also thought of the way Leonardo looked at her, the way he made her feel precious and powerful and alive. "What about Maya?" "She comes with us. Full scholarship to any medical school she wants, the best protection money can buy, a future without limits." "And Victoria?" Leonardo's expression hardened. "Victoria made her choice when she threatened your family. Now she'll live with the consequences." The sound of elevators and heavy footsteps echoed from the hallway. Time was running out. "I need an answer, Scarlett. Do you trust me?" She looked at this dangerous, powerful man who'd shown her a glimpse of a world beyond her wildest dreams. A man who'd killed to protect her, who'd offered her everything he had, who'd looked at her like she was worth saving. "Don't look at me like that," she said, echoing his words from the night before. "Like what?" "Like you're afraid I'll say no." Leonardo's smile was brilliant, transformative. "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes to everything," she whispered, and kissed him again as the sound of federal agents grew closer. They ran for the roof together, toward the helicopter and an uncertain future, but for the first time in years, neither of them was running alone. 2 years later, Scarlett Castellano stood on the balcony of their Tuscan villa, watching the sunset paint the rolling hills in shades of gold and crimson. The ring on her finger caught the light, a simple band of platinum that meant more to her than all the diamonds in the world. "Mrs. Castellano," a familiar voice said behind her, rough with affection. She turned to find her husband watching her with the same intensity he'd had that first night in his office. Leonardo had changed in the past 2 years. The shadows under his eyes had faded, replaced by laugh lines, and the kind of peace that came from being truly seen and loved. "Mr. Castellano," she replied, moving into his arms with the ease of long practice. "Maya called," he said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "She aced her MCAT practice test." Again. Scarlett smiled, thinking of her sister thriving in her pre-med program at Harvard, protected and provided for beyond her wildest dreams. She's going to be an incredible doctor. She gets that determination from her sister. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the Italian countryside settle into evening. Victoria had been arrested 6 months after their escape, charged with conspiracy and racketeering when her desperate attempts to destroy Leonardo had finally crossed too many legal lines. Marco Torino had been found floating in Biscayne Bay, a casualty of his father's overreach. Any regrets? Leonardo asked quietly. Scarlett thought of her old life, the 3 jobs, the constant worry, the invisible existence she'd traded for this dangerous, beautiful love. Only one, she said. What's that? She smiled up at him, her heart full of mischief and joy. That I waited so long to look at you like that. Leonardo's laughter echoed across the hills as he spun her around, both of them finally, completely home.